Hi there, tutor and viewers. I'm Luisa Maria Hernandez, and this is my research project. The research project is called Building Up Significant Knowledge in ESL on Third Grade Students in Vanguardia Cairo Alto School. Now we are going to see the introduction in the general background. Vanguardia Rural School is an educational institution placed on the outskirts of Villavicencio. The school has a very low English level, and the teacher in charge of English in the institution is a B1 level. There is no access to ICTs in the institution nor outside of it. One fact is that the teacher is not actually even an English teacher. It's just a teacher from another expertise that knows a little bit of English, so he is assigned to give the English classes. So the situation is even worse. Now let's see the problem. The use of ICTs within the language teaching learning process is perceived as a solution to ensure the quality of language learning education, and even more in more locations where English is a foreign language with non-native teachers, since those tools allow to build significant learning. This is very true when there is a situation where the teacher is no expert on English and there is a lack of English content or expertise in terms of English. The ICT seems to be the answer because ICTs know English better than humans. The educational institution focuses primarily in alphabetization, and English is normally alienated. Students are not familiarized with English as a foreign language, for what they do not see the need to learn or seem to be impossible or too boring to learn and it's feeling motivated. So because of those circumstances, the lack of a good English teacher, the lack of a good English environment, there are no ICT tools to get them surrounded by a good English environment. Students feel dismotivated because English doesn't seem to be something achievable for them to learn, and is not seen as something necessary either because it is not a part of their environment at all. This takes us to the research objectives. The general is to identify a strategy that allows significant learning acquisition in English as a foreign language on third grade students from Vanguardia Rural Cairo Alto. The specific is to analyze the specific obstacles that do not allow the acquisition of significant learning in English as a foreign language in the sample population. So even though I stated some obstacles in the problem, we need to find the specific ones. In terms of dynamics, didactics, pedagogical level, context level, at so many different levels that can obstacle the significant learning acquisition in English as a foreign language. So this is very important if we want to find a strategy that fits those needs and ensures the significant learning acquisition in the school. To explore the elements from current pedagogical strategies that meet the identified needs of the sample population and allow the acquisition of significant learning in English as a foreign language. So now we have identified the specific obstacles. We need to do an investigation on different strategies and find the ones that meet the needs identified in this context and that are actually applicable. So once this is done, we can make a strategy proposal to examine on the third specific objective, which is to examine the applicability of the strategy in the sample population context. So it is time to test the applicability of this strategy to see if it actually works and see the results. Now the literature review is split in two. The first one is the significant learning. Why is it so important and why are we so obsessed on acquiring it in the third grade students of Cairo Alto? Well, significant learning considers the learner's interpretation of the living experience to be crucial in this learning process. Every person perceives reality, organizes and gives its sense in the shape of constructs thanks to the central nervous system, which contributes to the edification of a coherent whole that gives sense and cohesion to reality. So the significant learning approach is a way of conscious learning that requires motivation, input, and an environment so the student can have long-lasting learning. So in terms of language learning, this feature seems to be very important because we want students to actually learn the contents they are being exposed to in terms of second language. The teacher has become a creator and administrator of such educational experiences that enable the construction of significant learning. The teacher is not a model of language nor teach the English, but learn along with the students motivated by the interest in language learning and that students learn. So, significant learning, the role of the teacher is not necessarily as a teacher, but as a dynamizer. Even though it is very important to have a good English teacher who is very aware of content, the main the main role of the teacher is to lead the learning rather than to provide it. Now, ICTs in education. This part of the overview helps to give an insight of the actual impact that ICTs have in education in second language and why being provided of such advantages can be so damaging in our context and our current context in Cairo Alto. English is easily available thanks to the Internet. The Internet and other electronic sources make large quantities of English available to learners and accordingly amplify the importance of English internationally. In this instance, technology has become a source of content and knowledge which represents a great potential to use in the language learning classes. Teachers appreciate the usefulness of technology since it is interactive and multisensory. In consequence, this provides an immediate context and facilities vocabulary and learning and understanding. So, ICTs helps to provide experiences that can be interpreted in significant learning constructs in the students' brains. So, uh, being provided with makes this challenge a bit harder for us to overcome through a strategy because we're looking for a strategy that doesn't require ICTs. Now, in the previous research, teachers in the past did not come with technological tools to work with given the low resources of the location. In this case, the primary contingent measurement is the use of textbooks. It is necessary to be conscious that to teach it is not necessary a big amount of material resources. It is simply about being creative and a good teacher. So Ramos here reminds us of the past, where teachers didn't have any ICTs and it didn't deprive them of giving successful lessons in English and to build up significant learning on their students in second language. So what do we need then to provide this significant learning? Well, first is the professional development. The main reason for the failure of programs intended to eradicate the educational disadvantages of poverty is the failure to support them with adequate professional development. So it is extremely necessary to have a good professional in English as a second language to provide the English lessons in order to achieve the significant learning we're trying to get throughout this whole research. The environment, using second language frequently in class routines, since it is the only contact students have with the foreign language. Encourage the participation in class, teach grammar and context, reward any effort made by students, encourage communication, and to make performances, dialogues, narrations, usually. So that's why it's so necessary to have a good professional in English as a second language because a good professional is able to provide a good environment and to use the second language frequently during class. So students when they are in these primary levels are able to receive this input and to copy it and to mimic it, which is a first step for English learning, to be honest. Creativity is a requirement in the language teaching learning process. Language is a creative feature on the humans. Each person uses language in a different way and expresses individuals' own personality. So this states creativity as a part of language by nature. So when we are trying to teach a creative element of our human nature, we have to be creative when teaching it. This feature takes a specific importance when facing specific challenges to overcome teachers' practice. This creative should be reflects from curriculum to methods, strategies, and lessons. For what creativity should be encouraged in students as well. A creative teacher is able to overcome any challenge in the classroom. So again, this is ligated to the professional development. A good professional is creative. And now we're going to see the theoretical framework. What are the strategy guidelines? What are we expecting our strategy to do when we in the identifying process? The first thing is the approach you mentioned. In the case of language learning strategies, are specific actions taken by the learner to make learning easier, faster, more enjoyable, and more self-directive, more effective, and more transferable to new situations. In the case of the Vanguardia Cairo Alto School, English learning strategies should not only be perceived as an action to make English learning easier, but achievable. So, this approach dimension should make sure that English is achievable. This strategy should make students think that learning English is achievable, so they don't feel dismotivated. Students dimension. Language learning strategies were divided into three main categories: metacognitive, cognitive, and social affective, which refers to learning, planning their learning, thinking about their learning process, monitoring their own comprehension or production, and evaluating the outcomes of their own learning. According to Lee, language learning strategies should involve students' own consciousness to learn by planning, setting goals, and be able to reflect and evaluate their own advance. This suggests that a successful strategy requires highly students' involvement. So in this strategy, the main role should be taken by students themselves. Teachers dimension. In language learning, when performing a strategy, teachers are recommended to create an encouraging atmosphere in the English classes to promote the students' positive attitudes towards English. They should also motivate the students to learn English, highlighting its importance. The EFL teachers must be aware that communicative approach encourages EFL student learners to collaborate and discuss their experiences and other issues regarding language learning. So, in the teacher's dimension, this strategy we are going to pick should make out of the teacher take an encouraging role, a dynamizer, a motivator, rather than a source of learning. Now, the research hypothesis. This study is designed to, first, determine the specific obstacles that does not allow the acquisition of significant learning in English as a foreign language in the sample population. Second, the elements from current pedagogical strategies that meet the identified needs of the sample population and allow the acquisition of significant learning in English as a foreign language. And third, the applicability of the strategy in the sample population context. So we have our research questions. Do the identified contexts second language learning obstacles influence the strategy establishment process? So these hypotheses are alternative. So they are mostly positive because they imply that the actions taken during the research will have an impact on the reality studied. So there is a significant influence in the strategy establishment process traced by the identified obstacles. Second question, is there any element from current pedagogical strategies that meet the identified needs on second language learning? The answer is positive as well. There are elements from current pedagogical strategies that meet the identified needs on second language learning. And the third question is, does the established strategy have any applicability on the target context? The answer is again positive. The established strategy has an applicability on the target content. And finally, there are my references for this project. Thank you very much.